probably next week we're going to be starting to talk about these with limits. So it's going to be very important anytime that we're dealing with something, any kind of rational function, we always want to look to see if it can be simplified. And in Algebra 2, we worked on simplifying rational expressions, and we kind of talked a little bit about them in pre-calculus as well. But basically what we're doing is we're looking for an alternative way to represent this expression. And you can see we have a trinomial in the numerator and a trinomial in the denominator. And hopefully so far in your math studies, you've noticed that trinomials often can be factored. Not always the case, but a lot of times we can go ahead and factor them. So basically, again, what we're looking for when factoring the numerator is we're looking for the number that's going to multiply to give us negative 24, then add to give us 2. The easiest thing you're going to want to do in your head is just think about all the numbers that multiply to give you 24. Whenever I'm doing this in my head, I always look for 24 and 1. I always start with the largest number first. 2, 8, and 3, and 6, and 4. And this is stuff that I'm doing in my head. I'm just writing this out because we haven't, talked about factoring and so forth. So therefore, I look for my factors that have a difference of 2, which is obviously 6 and 4. And since they need to multiply to give me a negative, that means one of these needs to be negative. But when I add them, they need to be positive. So that means my smaller factor is going to be negative. 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. 6 plus negative 4 is positive 2. So therefore, I can factor my numerator as n plus 6 times n minus 4. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing in my denominator. I need to figure out what two numbers multiply to give me 28, add to give me negative 11. I think of the factors of 28 in my head. And I have 28 and 1 and 7 and 4. Well, obviously, the two numbers that are going to multiply to give me negative 11 are going to be 7 and 4. But since they're adding to give me a negative, that means both of these factors have to be negative. And a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive, so that works out. So therefore, my factors here is n minus 4 divided by n minus 7. And then we apply the division property, which is basically if you have a number divided by a number, that equals 1. If you have a variable divided by a variable, that equals 1. If you have an expression divided by an expression, they're exactly the same, that equals 1. So n minus 4 divided by n minus 4 is equal to 1. And actually, I will remind you, this is the major mistake. That only works because these are separated by multiplication. If these are separated by addition or subtraction, you could not divide those out. Only works when they're separated by multiplication. So therefore, my final simplified answer is n plus 6 divided by n minus 7. Anybody have any questions on factoring?